The last thing Daniel remembered before the world went silent was the sound of her laugh, soft, familiar, and suddenly, gone. 3 hours later, he was standing beside a hospital bed, holding the hand of the woman who had shared his dreams, his debts, and the best 13 years of his life. The monitor had already flatlined. His wife, Sarah, was gone. Sarah had been his anchor, his balance. Without her, Daniel was just a man standing in the ruins of his own ordinary life. Before it all happened, their days had been simple but full. They woke early. She'd make coffee while he checked the news on his old phone. They'd talk about bills, groceries, and their son's future. Their laughter had lived in small places, in burnt toast, in inside jokes, in evenings spent planning the next paycheck. Life was far from easy, but it was theirs. That morning had felt like any other. Sarah had kissed his cheek before heading out to the small community library where she worked part-time. The rain had just begun, tapping softly against the window. Hours later, Daniel's phone rang. An unfamiliar number, a voice trembling on the other end. There had been an accident. A driver had lost control. The world became a blur of sirens, antiseptic smells, and white walls. He remembered the feel of her cold hand when they told him she wouldn't wake up. He remembered his knees hitting the hospital floor. He remembered trying to breathe and failing. When the funeral came, Daniel stood beside a plain wooden coffin that cost more than he could afford. He didn't cry at first. He just stared at the way the light hit the polished surface and thought about the numbers. $4,700 for the burial, $200 for the headstone, $900 for the service. Grief had a price tag, and it was merciless. In the days that followed, the house changed. It wasn't just empty. It was louder in its silence. The ticking of the kitchen clock felt cruel. The chair she used to sit in seemed to stare back at him. Even the smell of her shampoo clung to the bathroom, refusing to fade. Daniel's job as a warehouse clerk barely covered the essentials. The first late notice came in a bright red envelope, then another, then calls, voices that used his first name but spoke with mechanical sympathy. "Mr. Adams, your account is past due. We understand it's been a difficult time. Payment is required by the 15th. He'd never felt so small. At night, he sat at the kitchen table with a calculator and a cold cup of coffee, staring at numbers that refused to cooperate. $30,200 in credit card debt, $28,400 in medical bills, $12,000 left on the car loan, $134,000 on the mortgage. He was drowning, and every call, every letter was another wave pushing him under. One evening, he walked into what used to be their bedroom and found one of Sarah's journals. On the inside cover, she had written in neat, looping letters, "If you ever feel lost, remember, what we built wasn't money, it was meaning." He closed the book and sat in the dark for nearly an hour. That was the night he realized grief wasn't just about losing someone. It was about losing yourself in the process. His son, Matthew, was 9 and quiet. Too quiet. He had stopped asking for bedtime stories. He just sat beside his father, watching him stare into space. Once he whispered, "Dad, are we going to be okay?" Daniel couldn't answer. He just nodded, because that's what fathers do. They lie when the truth would break their children. Days became weeks. The bank sent another notice. The pantry grew emptier. Daniel started skipping meals so Matthew wouldn't have to. The walls felt closer each night, pressing in, reminding him that he was failing at everything. Husband, father, provider. Then came the moment he broke. It was a cold morning, and he found an envelope on the porch. Final notice, foreclosure pending. He sank onto the steps, the paper trembling in his hands. For the first time since Sarah's death, he cried. Not the quiet kind, the raw, shaking kind that makes your chest ache and your breath stutter. That night, after putting Matthew to bed, Daniel went back to the kitchen table. The journal sat open beside the unpaid bills. He stared at Sarah's words again. What we built wasn't money. It was meaning. He whispered to the empty room, "Then what do I build now?" And in that question, somewhere between exhaustion and despair, something inside him shifted. He didn't know it yet, but that would be the night Daniel Adams began the long road back. A road that would test every part of him, but lead him to a purpose greater than survival. The weeks after Sarah's funeral felt like falling through fog. Days blurred. Meals were optional. Sleep came in fragments. Daniel moved through his home like a ghost, opening drawers, folding laundry that wasn't his, waiting for a voice that would never call out again. The bills didn't wait for grief to fade. They arrived with mechanical precision, white envelopes that carried small doses of panic. The due dates didn't care that he could barely breathe. He started selling things. First the TV, then Sarah's old bicycle, then the small gold necklace she used to wear every Sunday. Each item left a space in the house that felt colder than before. His savings vanished within a month. What was once $3,200 became $41.76 in his account. The next rent payment loomed like a storm cloud. He applied for every job he could find, dozens, then hundreds. But the world wasn't waiting for a grieving man in his late 30s with no college degree and a broken heart. Finally, a small logistics company offered him a night shift position, sorting boxes in a freezing warehouse on the edge of town. 12-hour shifts, minimum wage, no benefits. The kind of job that breaks your body before it pays your bills. He took it. The first night, he clocked in wearing his only clean uniform, a faded blue shirt with a patch that read "Temporary Staff." The air smelled like oil and cold concrete. Machines hummed, forklifts beeped. Men moved with mechanical rhythm, eyes down, shoulders heavy. By 3 a.m., Daniel's hands were raw. By 5, his back screamed. By 7, he was just a body moving boxes from one pile to another, his mind stuck in loops of memory. Sarah's smile, her voice, her promise that everything would work out somehow. But it wasn't working out. His paycheck barely covered food and utilities. The medical collectors still called. The bank still threatened foreclosure. He tried to hide the struggle from Matthew, but kids see what adults don't say. One night, when Daniel came home late and exhausted, he found his son at the kitchen table counting coins from an old jar. "What are you doing, buddy?" Matthew looked up, his voice small. "Trying to help. For the house." Daniel turned away before his son could see the tears. That night, he skipped dinner again. The downward spiral accelerated. His car broke down, won $200 to fix. He couldn't afford it. So he started walking 2 miles to the warehouse every night. Rain, heat, didn't matter. By the time he got home in the mornings, his feet were blistered. The neighbors began to avoid eye contact. Friends stopped calling. People didn't know what to say to a man who had lost everything. Then came the breaking point. It was late December, bone cold and gray. Daniel opened the mailbox and found a letter stamped in red. Foreclosure effective January 10th. The house, the only thing left that still held her presence, would be gone. He stumbled inside, clutching the letter. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick and heavy. He sat on the living room floor, surrounded by bills and silence. For hours, he didn't move. At some point, he whispered into the empty room, "I can't do this anymore." But then he saw something. Matthew's drawings pinned to the fridge. Crayon sketches of stick figures. A man, a woman, and a little boy, all smiling under a bright sun. Underneath, in messy letters, it said, "Me and Mom and Dad, together forever." Daniel broke. He cried the way a person does when there's nothing left to protect. His sobs echoed through the small house. He punched the floor. He screamed until his voice cracked. Then, finally, he sat there in silence, staring at those drawings. And for the first time in months, a thought surfaced. Small, fragile, but real. If Sarah had believed in meaning more than money, Maybe meaning was still something he could rebuild. The next morning, he did something different. Instead of just surviving the day, he made a list. It wasn't much, just a few words scrawled in a notebook. Keep the house, learn something new, build again. He didn't know how. He didn't have a plan. But writing it down was the first time he had chosen hope over despair. That night at the warehouse, during his lunch break, Daniel overheard two coworkers talking about side work. Small jobs, fixing things, delivering packages, repairing fences. It's not much, one of them said, but it adds up if you're willing to grind. Daniel listened quietly, then asked a question that would change his life. How do you start? And in that simple question, in that moment of humility and hunger, began the faintest flicker of his comeback. A flicker that would, in time, become a fire. Daniel didn't rise overnight. The climb began in inches, not miles. Every step forward hurt, but at least he was moving. The day after that conversation at the warehouse, he borrowed an old toolbox from a coworker named Luis. Start small, Luis said. People always need something fixed. So Daniel did. On weekends, he started taking odd jobs, repairing doors, patching fences, replacing light switches. He charged little, often too little, but the goal wasn't profit yet. It was momentum. His first month brought in an extra $230. It wasn't much, but it was something. For the first time since Sarah's death, the math in his notebook didn't need to feel like a death sentence. It felt like a puzzle he might someday solve. He created a simple system inspired by something he's read online during a late-night search for how to get out of debt. 3 envelopes. 1 labeled Essentials. 1 Debt. 1 Hope. Every payday, he divided the cash. $200 for bills, $400 toward debts, $100 for savings, even if it meant skipping new shoes or a proper dinner. He taped Sarah's journal quote above the kitchen table. What we built wasn't money, it was meaning. It became his compass. The next months were a blur of fatigue and small victories. He worked nights at the warehouse, slept 4 hours, then did side jobs till sunset. He drank more coffee than water. His hands grew calloused, his back ached constantly, but something inside him was healing. Matthew began to notice. "Dad," he said one evening, watching his father fix a neighbor's mailbox, "you don't look sad all the time anymore." Daniel smiled faintly. "That's because I'm building again." "What are you building?" He looked at his son. "A way for us to stay." The foreclosure clock was still ticking, but Daniel's determination was louder. He called the bank, explained his plan, begged for an extension. The woman on the line said they could review his case if he showed steady income for 60 days. It wasn't a promise, but it was a crack in the wall. So he pushed harder. He learned to negotiate better rates, to say no to underpaying clients. He discovered online tutorials about budgeting, home repair, and even marketing. On weekends, he walked through neighborhoods, leaving handwritten notes on doors. Affordable repairs, honest work. By the 3rd month, his side work earned nearly as much as his warehouse job. But with every small victory came a new challenge. One afternoon, his only drill broke mid-job. Replacing it cost $85, nearly his entire week's profit. Another time, a client refused to pay, claiming the repair wasn't up to standard. Daniel drove home in silence, fists tight on the steering wheel, fighting the urge to quit. But then he'd see Matthew waiting at the window, waving, smiling, and quitting stopped being an option. By spring, he'd paid off his smallest credit card, $200 gone. He celebrated quietly with his son by cooking pancakes for dinner. It wasn't about food, it was about reclaiming control. Then came a turning point. One evening, an elderly woman from church named Mrs. Harper called. Her house had a leaking roof. She couldn't afford to hire a big company. "I heard you've been helping people," she said softly. "Would you take a look?" Daniel agreed. It was the hardest job he'd taken yet. Steep roof, old materials, and heavy rain threatening every hour. He worked 2 full weekends, often in drizzle, with Matthew passing him nails and holding a flashlight. When it was done, she tried to pay him more than he'd quoted. He shook his head. "You keep it. You already gave me something I needed." "What's that?" she asked. "Purpose." Word spread after that. People liked his honesty. His phone started ringing more often. He registered a small trade name, Adams Handworks. It wasn't official, just words on a business card he printed at home, but it made him feel legitimate. The bank saw his progress and extended the foreclosure notice another 90 days. It was a small victory, but for Daniel, it was everything. At night, he began reading again. Not just repair manuals, but books on money management, emotional resilience, and purpose. He started to understand what Sarah had meant all along. Wealth wasn't measured by possessions, but by what you could build after everything was taken from you. Still, grief never disappeared. Some nights he'd still wake up reaching for her side of the bed. Sometimes a scent, a song, a flash of memory would break him all over again. But those moments no longer destroyed him. They reminded him why he was fighting. 6 months later, Daniel sat at the same kitchen table where he once stared at overdue bills. This time, there were receipts, paid in full. The credit card balance, 0. He looked across the room at Matthew, doing homework with his tongue sticking out in concentration, and felt something he hadn't felt in years: pride. He still had miles to go, but for the first time since Sarah's death, he could finally see the road ahead. And in the quiet that followed, Daniel whispered to himself, "I'm not just surviving anymore." He didn't know it yet, but that whisper would lead to the greatest chapter of all, one that would turn his pain into purpose and transform his small, fragile comeback into something much bigger than himself. 3 years later, Daniel Adams stood on the same patch of earth where everything had once fallen apart. Only this time, it looked nothing like before. The yard was tidy. The paint on the porch gleamed under the morning light. The house, the one that had almost been taken from him, was now fully his. Every inch of it carried the story of his fight. It had taken 1,098 days, $42,000 in total debt payments, and more nights without sleep than he could count. But the number that mattered most wasn't the money. It was the moment. The final payment, $642.13, was made on a gray Tuesday morning. Daniel had driven to the small credit union with trembling hands. He handed the cashier a worn envelope labeled Freedom, filled with small bills he'd been saving for months. When the woman stamped the receipt and said, "Congratulations, Mr. Adams, your account is paid in full," something inside him finally exhaled. He walked outside, leaned against his truck, and cried. Not the kind of cry that breaks you open, the kind that puts you back together. When he got home, Matthew was waiting on the porch steps. "It's done?" Daniel nodded, tears still glistening. "Then we're really free?" He smiled. "We always were. We just had to prove it." That night, they celebrated with a homemade pizza, laughter echoing in the small kitchen that once felt like a war zone of overdue bills. The air felt lighter. Even the walls seemed to breathe again. Over the next year, Daniel grew Adams Handworks into a small, steady business. He hired 2 part-time helpers, both young men from his neighborhood who had lost jobs and direction, just like he once had. "You're not working for me," he told them. "You're working with me. We build things, not just houses, but lives." He began volunteering twice a month at a community center, teaching free workshops on basic home repair and budgeting. He'd start every class the same way. "I'm not rich, but I'm proof that you can rebuild from rock bottom. $1, 1 nail, 1 decision at a time." People listened. They cried. They laughed. Some came back months later to tell him they'd paid off their first credit card or started their own side hustle. And every time, Daniel thought of Sarah and smiled. On the anniversary of her passing, He drove out to the small cemetery just outside town. The morning was cool, a thin fog hugging the ground. He knelt by her grave, brushing away the fallen leaves, and placed a small wooden birdhouse beside her headstone, one he and Matthew had built together. He ran his hand over the smooth grain, the smell of cedar mixing with the damp air. "I finally did it," he whispered. "We did it." He paused. "You were right, you know. Meaning isn't something you buy, it's something you build. And I'm still building." The wind stirred gently through the trees, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel the emptiness in his chest. Just peace. Later that afternoon, he drove Matthew to his first high school orientation. His son, now taller, more confident, carried his backpack and said, "Dad, I want to learn carpentry, like you." Daniel's throat tightened. "Then you'll build things even stronger than I ever did." As the sun set that evening, he sat on the porch with a cup of coffee. No bills on the table, no fears clawing at the back of his mind. Just quiet. He thought of how far they'd come, from $42,000 in debt to full ownership, from despair to stability, from loss to purpose. He wasn't rich by the world's standards, but in every way that mattered, he was wealthy beyond measure. He looked at the birdhouse hanging from the porch beam, swaying gently in the breeze, and smiled. "Love built this," he murmured. And for the first time since burying the love of his life, Daniel Adams didn't feel buried at all. He felt alive. What did you think of Daniel's story? Have you ever faced a loss or financial struggle that made you question everything and had to rebuild from scratch? Tell us in the comments where you're from and share a bit of your story. We'd love to hear your journey of strength and resilience. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Every day we share new stories of struggle, courage, and transformation, just like this one.